Hey there. Welcome to your personalized deep dive.
Mhm.
You shared some really interesting excerpts with us from Numbers chapter 5 of the King James Bible.
Yeah.
And today we're going to unpack what this ancient text reveals about life in ancient Israel. So get ready to explore how societal concerns about purity and justice and relationships played out in ways that might just surprise you.
It is remarkable how these laws, as archaic as they might seem to us now, offer just a glimpse into a world where the spiritual and the physical were really deeply intertwined.
Yeah, right off the bat, we encounter this idea of keeping the camp pure. And it's not just about like hygiene, like as we think of it today. The text commands the Israelites to expel anyone considered unclean. So lepers, those with discharges, and even people who had just touched a dead body.
Right.
That's a pretty wide net, wouldn't you say?
It is, and it really suggests this deep-seated anxiety about contamination, but not just in the physical sense.
Yeah.
Remember, for the Israelites, touching a corpse wasn't simply unsanitary. It was spiritually defiling. This act represented a brush with the realm of death, something that they believed could disrupt the sanctity of the community and their relationship with God.
So it's like they saw disease not just as like a biological threat, but as a potential sign of spiritual imbalance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by removing these individuals from the camp, they weren't necessarily being cruel. They were trying to restore balance to protect the community from both physical and spiritual harm. In a sense, it was a form of ritualistic quarantine, rooted in a belief system that saw the divine in every aspect of life.
You know, it's interesting to think about how we still grapple with these ideas of purity and contamination today, even if the things we fear are different.
Absolutely. Think about the stigma surrounding certain illnesses, or even just like social taboos. We might not cast people out of the camp literally,
Right.
but there are subtle ways that we distance ourselves from those that we perceive as different or dangerous.
Okay, so we've got this like intense focus on purity, but then the chapter kind of shifts gears and lays out some very specific instructions about restitution for wrongdoing.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating here is the emphasis on not only accountability, but also making things right. It's not enough to simply say, I'm sorry. The guilty party must repay the victim the full value of what was taken, plus an additional 20%.
Wow, 20%. That's a hefty penalty.
Okay.
Seems like they were really serious about deterring theft and ensuring fairness. But what really struck me was this detail. If the victim had no next of kin off, the repayment went to the priest. What was that all about?
It's intriguing detail, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some scholars suggest it might have been a way to prevent the exploitation of vulnerable individuals who didn't have family to advocate for them. Others see it as acknowledging the spiritual dimension of the offense. By giving the restitution to the priest, it was almost like making amends to God as well as to the victim.
So it's like this act of theft wasn't just a crime against a person, but a disruption of the social and spiritual order, and the restitution was a way to restore that order.
Precisely. And it really highlights this interconnectedness of their legal, social, and religious systems. Everything was woven together.
And speaking of interconnectedness, there's another part of this chapter that I found particularly captivating, although a bit unsettling.
Oh.
It's the ritual for dealing with suspected infidelity, what's often called the ordeal of the bitter water.
Ah, yes. This is where Numbers chapter 5 takes a dramatic turn.
It really does. So we have this situation where a husband suspects his wife of infidelity, but has no concrete proof. And in this world, without DNA testing or private investigators,
Right.
what do? They turn to this elaborate ritual that seems to appeal directly to divine judgment.
And what's striking is the intensity of this ritual. The priest mixes holy water with dust from the floor of the tabernacle,
Wow.
a potent symbol of both purity and the presence of God.
Yeah.
Then the woman has to drink this bitter water after swearing this powerful oath.
You're right. It does seem designed to evoke a very visceral reaction, both physically and emotionally.
Absolutely.
Huh.
And then there's the outcome. If the woman is guilty, the text says her belly will swell and her thigh will rot. But if she's innocent, she'll be unharmed and able to conceive.
It's hard to imagine the fear and uncertainty that this ritual must have generated, and you have to wonder about the psychological effects on both the accused woman and her husband, even if she was ultimately declared innocent. It makes you wonder if this ordeal was as much about controlling women's bodies and sexuality as it was about uncovering the truth.
That's a question that scholars have debated for centuries. It's important to remember that this ritual took place within a patriarchal society where women's worth was often tied to their ability to bear children.
So in a sense, this ordeal wasn't just about infidelity, it was about reinforcing societal expectations about female virtue and reproductive health.
Exactly. And the very act of being accused, regardless of the outcome, could have had lasting social consequences for a woman. It's a stark reminder of how power dynamics can shape interpretations of justice and morality.
It's fascinating how this one ritual, the ordeal of the bitter water, seems to encapsulate so many anxieties and complexities of ancient Israelite society. It's almost like looking through a window into their worldview.
It is. And it highlights how interwoven their beliefs were. The divine wasn't some distant concept. It was intimately involved in their everyday lives, from matters of personal hygiene to legal disputes to marital relationships.
I've been thinking about that 20% restitution penalty for theft. On the surface, it seems like a straightforward deterrent. But did it have any unintended consequences? Did it impact their economic system in any way?
That's a great question. Some scholars believe that such a steep penalty might have actually discouraged lending and economic activity. Think about it, if you knew that failing to repay a loan could result in losing not only the original amount, but an additional 20%,
Right.
you might be hesitant to lend money in the first place.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
So these laws designed to maintain order and justice could have inadvertently stifled economic growth. It shows how even well-intentioned rules can have unforeseen consequences.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of considering the broader social and economic context when interpreting these ancient laws. They weren't just abstract principles, they had real-world impacts on people's lives.
As we've been discussing these laws and rituals, I've noticed how central the role of the priest is. They seem to be involved in everything from overseeing the expulsion of the unclean to administering the ordeal of the bitter water. What does that tell us about their position in society?
It's a crucial observation. The priests weren't just religious figures, they were also arbiters of justice, interpreters of the law, and guardians of social order. They held a position of immense authority and influence.
It makes me wonder if that power was ever abused. Was there a system of checks and balances? What happened if someone disagreed with the priest's ruling?
Those are great questions, and unfortunately the text doesn't provide easy answers. We can speculate that there were likely mechanisms for appeal or dispute resolution, but the details are lost to history. It's a reminder that these texts offer a glimpse into the past, but they don't tell the whole story. There's always more to uncover, more to understand about the complexities of ancient life.
So as we delve deeper into these ancient texts, it's important to remember that we're dealing with a snapshot, not a complete picture. And it's up to us to piece together the fragments to try to understand the lives and experiences of the people who lived by these laws.
Exactly. And in doing so, we might find ourselves confronting uncomfortable truths about power prejudice and the human capacity for both compassion and cruelty.
It's a reminder that the past is never truly past. It continues to shape our present in ways we may not always realize.
And as we grapple with these ancient texts, we're also engaging in a conversation about our own values and beliefs. What do we consider pure? How do we define justice? And what rituals and practices in our own society reflect our anxieties and desires?
It's almost like we're holding up a mirror to our own society, right? We've been dissecting these ancient laws. But what would someone from the future think of our modern-day rituals and practices?
Now, that's a fascinating question. Imagine thousands of years from now, archaeologists unearthing the remnants of our civilization. What would they make of our obsession with social media, for example? Those endless streams of photos and likes and status updates, what would they say about our values and anxieties?
Yeah, I can just picture them puzzling over the meaning behind our carefully curated online personas and the strange rituals of influencer culture. Would they see it as a form of social currency? A desperate attempt to connect in an increasingly fragmented world?
Perhaps they'd see it as a reflection of our deep-seated need for validation and belonging, or maybe even a form of digital self-preservation, like leaving our mark on the digital landscape for future generations to discover, It's a thought-provoking exercise to try to see ourselves through the eyes of those who come after us.
It really is. And it brings us back to a point you made earlier about how these ancient texts can spark a conversation about our own values and beliefs. We've been exploring how the Israelites define purity, justice, and fidelity. But what about us? What are our bitter waters, so to speak? What are the things that we grapple with that keep us up at night?
It's different for everyone, of course. But I think some common threads might be our constant pursuit of happiness, our struggle to find meaning in a rapidly changing world, and our desire to connect with something larger than ourselves.
And maybe future generations will look back at our attempts to navigate these challenges with the same mixture of fascination and bewilderment that we feel when we delve into these ancient texts.
It's certainly humbling to think about, but it's also a reminder that we're all part of this ongoing human story, this search for meaning and connection that transcends time and place.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into Numbers chapter 5. It's been an incredible journey exploring these ancient laws and uncovering the layers of meaning hidden within them.
It has. It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. And remember, this is just the beginning. There are countless other texts waiting to be explored, stories waiting to be told, and connections waiting to be made between the past and the present.
Absolutely. So, to our listener, we encourage you to keep digging, keep questioning, and keep searching for those threads that connect us to the vast tapestry of human history. You never know what fascinating insights you might discover.
And who knows? Maybe someday someone will be doing a deep dive into your life and times, wondering what it all meant.
That's a thought. Until then, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Happy exploring.